If you give a 55% discount in Spark, the bookstore is going to get what they call a regular discount. That means, depending on the number of books that you buy, it'll be anywhere from a 40 to a 43% discount to us. So Ingram is going to pocket usually 15% of that. So if you go down to a 50%, it's going to show up as 36% for me. And it'll go all the way down to 25%. I actually have seen 20%, 10%. And the thing that chills every bookstore's soul is when we see a book listed with net.
Welcome to the Stark Reflections on Writing and Publishing podcast. There has never been a better time for writers. More information, options, and opportunities are available to you, but navigating these requires insight. Join Mark Leslie Lefebvre as he draws upon more than a quarter century of experience as a writer, a bookseller, and a trusted book industry consultant to explore and reflect on the writing and publishing landscape to help you make informed choices on your writer journey.
Hello, Reflectives, and welcome to episode 167 of the Stark Reflections on Writing and Publishing podcast. This is your host, Mark Leslie Lefebvre. In this episode, I have an interview with Laura Hayden. Born and raised in Birmingham, Alabama, Laura started reading at the age of 4 and in 6 short years exhausted the children's section of the local branch library. She switched very quickly to adult mysteries and science fiction and never looked back. Laura is a writer and a bookseller, one of the founders of Pikes Peak Writers, and the mastermind behind Author, an experimental and dynamic retail bookshop that deals in online sales, special events, books for writers, and books for authors. She provides a unique service for writers and also shares some invaluable insights into the inner workings of bookstore buying. If you have print books available for distribution through KDP Print, Ingram Spark, Draft Digital Print, or other sources, you won't want to miss this great information. This is information that I actually wish I had when I was putting together an author's guide to working with bookstores and libraries. Information I'm going to have to quickly add to an updated version of that book, and you'll see soon. And that interview is coming up later on in the podcast. But first, let's get to a word from this episode's sponsor. This episode is sponsored by Findaway Voices. Findaway Voices allows you, the author, to take control over your audiobook. With Findaway Voices, you can find a professional narrator to work with, and it is manually project managed. It's not a complete DIY experience, which means you can rely on experts who work at Findaway to help you find the best narrator for your project. If you have the audiobook, you can use Findaway Voices to upload and distribute. And you can set and control your own price at 98.9% of all the platforms. There's only one major one out there that doesn't allow you to control the price. But with Findaway Voices, they have partnerships with Chirp, which is BookBub's audiobook platform. And you can apply for promotions through Chirp. You can also do promotions through Apple Books. With Findaway Voices, you can participate in such programs as the Mandy Roth program, which is a free audiobook giveaway program called Let It Snow, which I am participating in. And with programs like that, you can use the giveaway codes from Findaway Voices that you can have the audiobook downloaded on the Authors Direct Findaway app, which is available on most smartphone devices. I should say all smartphone devices, unless you have a flip phone, but that's not quite so smart. You can participate in such promotions, and there's all kinds of great opportunities for you to find your way with audio with Findaway Voices. If you want to look for ways how you can leverage audiobooks to your advantage, check out Findaway Voices over at starkreflections.ca/Findaway. In terms of a personal update this week, I did a couple of virtual library events, which were a lot of fun. Now, one of them was for a group of teen writers from the Monroe Public Library in Pennsylvania. And this was done at the end of a series of writing workshops for teens that were done at the library. And I was the author guest to sort of talk to them about what they could do, now that they've got some writing under their belt. What are the opportunities that exist for writers? And it was amazing. It was a small group of young folks with really great questions, bright young writers, and I love talking to those writers. It reminds me of when I was teaching drama to 12 to 15-year-olds. Now, most of the writers in this group were older than that. They were probably 13 to 16, that range. But it was really, really great to see the questions that they had, and just you can tell, because I could see them on the Zoom chat. You could tell that they were engaged and really attending to all of the information that was being shared. And this was interesting because this was run by my friend Michelle, who is a librarian, who I am going to be bringing on a future episode of this show. She's in charge of teen services at that library. And it was interesting. Now, Michelle and I met years ago through blogging, back in the early days of blogging. And we were blogging together, and I guess you would call it memes. We connected through a meme. And we realized as we were connecting for this call, we had never actually spoken to one another before, even though I've known her for 15 or more years. I have to go back and do, probably 15, because I started blogging around the time that my son was born. And it was really intriguing that we had communicated, we had messaged each other, we had commented on each other's blogs, we followed each other's careers, felt like we're old friends, and realized I had never actually spoken to her. I'd heard her voice. She had heard my voice from the podcast, as well as some other presentations I had done. But her and I had never spoken before, so that was a really fascinating experience. The next night, earlier this week, I was a guest for my friend Susie Maloney, who is the writer-in-residence at the Edmonton Public Library. And I was there to do a talk for her, which was also a similar accumulation or sort of as she's gearing up for the end of her residency, helping writers. And it was basically, so you've written a book, now what? And it was very similar. Of course, it was for an adult audience. So I was just kind of talking about what are the opportunities that exist for writers, which I love. I love sharing those kinds of things. And it was fascinating because I first met Susie when I was a bookseller. It was probably in 1993, 1994, somewhere around then. And I was shelving books, new books that had come into the bookstore I was working at. I was an assistant manager. And I remember picking up this book that was stark white, Bastion Falls, and immediately having to check it out because there was this bloody hand popping out of the snow. And it was just fascinating that's how I met Susie. That's how I discovered the wonder of who she was. I was honored to then be in an anthology with Susie, which was just a thrill. And I was honored to publish her in Campus Chills when I was editing that anthology in 2009. I reached out to a whole bunch of different Canadian writers, and Susie was one of the ones who, along with Kelly Armstrong and Nancy Kilpatrick and Sephora Giron and Edo Van Belkom and Steve Vernon, so many great Canadian writers who participated and sent me a story for Campus Chills. And it was kind of funny to finally get to do some work with her on that. And that was another great group of people. It was a much larger group and some really, really great questions. And it was a lot of fun. So that was some of the stuff. And I love doing those talks. I love helping show writers the opportunities that exist. Because as you're going to see from Laura, I mean, the opportunities are so amazing. Even just another interview I did this week that's going to be coming up in a future episode is when you think about the opportunities that exist in this digital world, it is truly, truly phenomenal. And other personal news, Kobo's been doing really, really well for me. Obviously, I have some insights having worked at Kobo, but I was invited to participate in a buy one, get one free promo that's running for the entire month of December. and I'm trending relatively well. I saw my book go from, it was like in the thousands, now it's in the top 50 of all three categories. I think it's like number 12, number 52, number 32 or something. It's pretty high up, considering as part of this promo. And this is a 8-volume set of my entire Nocturnal Screams series. I think I mentioned in previous episodes, I put it together just to have a box set, a big box set that was selling for $17 and change in this promo. And again, because it's part of a buy one, get one free, I'm not actually getting the sales. I'm not getting the 70% of that on each sale, because the way that a buy one, get one free works is they put the two books together, then they average out the cost of both of them, and then there's sort of a split depending on how much your book was compared to the other book. There's when I worked at Kobo, I remember sitting down with the finance team and working out the math, and it works out very, very fair. So if you have like a $20 book and a 99-cent book, well, the 99-cent book doesn't get half the cut. It's sort of comparable to the percentage of the value. So I'm not going to obviously get the full value of that $17.99 book, but I'm going to get some pretty decent value from that. And then the other promo that's been going on at Kobo since the beginning of November is this Nano promo. And this is a really awesome promo, and I've mentioned it before, but I'm going to mention it because this is good until the end of the year 2020. So until end of day, December 31st, 2020, you can get these 4 books using a simple code. You can get the Indie Author Mindset by Adam Croft. Amazing book. I have read it. Loved it. You can get Dear Writer, You Need to Quit by Becca Syme. Amazing book. I read it. I loved it. You can get Let's Get Digital, How to Self-Publish and Why You Should by David Gaughran, which I've read, and it's awesome. And of course, you can get The 7 P's of Publishing Success by me, which, yeah, I'm kind of partial. I think it's a pretty good book. But you can get those 4 books for free from Kobo using Nano 2020. All no space, Nano 2020. And I think it's uppercase. I don't think it matters. NANO 2020. So what you do is you drop those into your shopping cart on Kobo. Then you add the coupon code Nano 2020. It will make them all free. And then you can get them for free. And you don't need to own a Kobo reader to take advantage of that. You can use a free Kobo app for your PC or any smartphone device. And the reason why being in a promo like this is so beneficial is that it goes through the shopping cart, which means it looks like a sale to all the algorithms. So the 7 P's of Publishing Success has been trending at number 1 in 3 different categories for several weeks on Kobo. And when I look at my dashboard, this is the interesting thing, because when I look at the dashboard, I can't tell the difference between a promo sale where it was given for 100% off and a real sale. But even if 5% of those sales that I'm seeing there are real, it's going to be a pretty solid month for that book for me on Kobo. And what I'm going to do, because the Kobo dashboard doesn't kind of share those details, what I'm going to do is I won't know for sure until I see the sales report. And the sales report will show whether I got, the full retail price for it, or whether it was a coupon code that, the cost was free, and therefore, here this counts as a sale, but it was a free sale, so it's like a free download. But it's a really important thing for promotions on Kobo that I believe I stressed in the book Killing It on Kobo, and I want to stress again today. And I'm going to share, so for the patrons of the podcast, I'm going to be sharing those numbers, the full details, so you can kind of understand the details. I will share on a future episode once I have the sales report. I'll share that with you guys, but then I'll give the full nitty-gritty details to my patrons, because of course they're the patrons who support this podcast. And speaking of patrons, I would like to welcome new patron Melissa Yi to the small but powerful group of folks who support this podcast over on patreon.com/starkreflections. For as little as $1, $3, or $5 a month, you can support the podcast and gain access to additional content, like the content that I'm going to be pushing out, as well as additional audio content, video content, etc. And that's one of the ways you can support the podcast. Of course, you do not have to become a patron. I love the fact that you're listening to this podcast. that is beneficial and valuable for me. Thank you for being a listener. Other ways that you can support the podcast is by leaving a review on the podcatcher of your choice, or better yet, sharing this podcast with somebody that you think would find value in it. Well, that's it for the introductory matter for this podcast. Let's get right into this interview with Laura Hayden. Laura, welcome to the Stark Reflections podcast.
Thank you, Mark.
I am so thrilled that I get the chance to hang out with you today and find out more about author. But before we go there, I want to know more about Laura Hayden and your career as a writer, as a creative person.
Well, it all started back when I was 6. No, I was an early reader. So by the time I got to be 10 years old, I literally had read every children's book in the local branch of the Birmingham Public Library.
Wow.
And God bless my favorite librarian took me by the, as I say, sticky little hand and took me to the adult mysteries and science fiction. She started me out on Ray Bradbury, Isaac Asimov short stories.
Oh, really?
And then Ellery Queen and Rex Stout. And by the time I was
Wow.
about 13, I had read everything.
Well, wait a second. So you've gotten into the Bradbury, the Asimov, the Ellery Queen, the Stout, like all the, wow, that's quite genre specific. Now, prior to that, were you a fan of the genres? Or was this librarian like a mentor that brought you in there?
I had pretty much read all Nancy Drew and Hardy Boys by then, and really loving the Nancy Drew and Hardy Boy television shows now. I just binge watched all of Hardy Boys. It may be different, but it's okay. I always liked genres. I mean, the school was full of biographies. Big whoop. School librarians are staring at me and flipping the rulers, but those were boring. I'm not a history person by any stretch. I'm married to a PhD historian, and I'm like, history, I don't care.
You get that at the dinner table every night, right?
Yeah, right. It's like, forget that. Now let's talk about now. Let's talk about how to kill people. But yeah, I always had genres in my soul. And I really didn't get into romance until I was working in a bookstore.
And
in between the time I was a kid in the library and I worked in a bookstore, finished high school, went to the University of Alabama, got a degree in industrial engineering, like all good writers do. And you don't have time for reading in college when you have so much heavy duty homework. But I would sneak a little time every now and then out on the balcony, AKA fire escape, and do some reading. I can't even tell you what I read in those days, but I didn't have to go to much English classes, so I was really happy. A writer who says, I didn't like English class. But after I finished college, married a man who a year later joined the Air Force to see the world.
Whoa.
By that time, I was working for the telephone company. This was, to tell you how old I am, it was pre-divestiture. So we had all the baby bells still hanging around as part of the big Ma Bell. And I thought, oh, great. He's joined the Air Force. We don't know where we're going to move. I'm working for the telephone company. What's everywhere? Telephones.
Yeah.
Except for when you move from Birmingham 90 miles to Montgomery, Alabama, there are no management level telephone company jobs there. So all of a sudden, this great career I had raises, I'd had promotions. I had no job. And I couldn't get a job because they didn't want an Air Force wife who was going to move in X number of years.
Right.
Walked into a small used bookstore that was on the edge of our neighborhood and said, hey, could you use some part-time help? The guy says, well, I could. I could use a person 2 days a week. I'm going, I'll work for you. Minimum wage. I don't care. I just want out of the house. And 6 weeks later, I was the manager of the store. 8 weeks later, and that was from when I started, he had left and gone to Europe with his new wife on his honeymoon and left the store $4,000 in debt.
Oh.
I had no ability to sign on any accounts. All I had were pre-done checks for rent and utilities. I was on my own from that point on. When he came back, I had already wired him $2,000 while he was gone, and he was $4,000 in the black.
Whoa. How long was this?
This was a total. He was gone for 8 weeks over a summer. And
you turned that business around in 8 weeks?
Well, he had a bunch of stock that he had never put on the floor. It was all classics. And I said,
it doesn't sell when you don't put it out, right?
Yeah, I know. But as I called all the schools and colleges in the area and found out what their classics lists were for that next semester, none of these books were on it. I turned it back into the publisher, got all that credit, started buying new books.
Oh, wait. So I thought you said this was a used bookstore.
It is a used bookstore. He did sell some new books.
Oh, he had some new okay.
He had one case of new books. When he came back, he had 4. And I was moving books really fast.
Wow.
Because there weren't any, we didn't have a Barnes & Noble. We had a Walden Books or a B. Dalton in the mall. That was it. Small town. So he liked me. And I liked working there. And I learned so much about books and bookstores working in this little used bookstore. We had over 100,000 titles, though, because when you only have 2 copies of a book, you get to count that as one title and add to all your inventory. Cut to 10, 15 years later in the Air Force, kids are in school, I'm bored. I'll walk into a small used bookstore. I said, you're really unorganized. Let me work here for a day and let me show you how I can organize your shelves. They had, let's just like all the men mystery writers in one place, all over the place. They weren't alphabetized. I said, you'll sell much more books if they're alphabetized. You've got all your Rex Stouts together. You have all your Ellery Queens together. You're going to sell books. They said, well, it can't be done. One day, I straightened out 2 of their big sections. I alphabetized backwards. That's the way you do it accurately. Yeah. He hired me, and I worked for him for 2 years. And I was working with a really nice lady there who said, I was thinking about writing at that point. You think about writing for a couple of years, and then you start writing some. And I was telling her the storyline I had. She goes, that sounds like a Harlequin intrigue to me. And I said, what's a Harlequin intrigue? She goes, wait. And she walked over to the shelf. She pulled about a dozen books. Says, here, read these and bring them back. I read those. I said, pretty damn good. And it does sound like my story. So I went back and I picked about a dozen more. And every week I picked up about a dozen books. And by the time I'd read about 50 of them, I said, okay, there's not a formula other than they get together at the end. I can do this. And I wrote it and I sold my first book to Harlequin Intrigue.
Wow, really?
To this. I literally sold it on the road between assignments. We were moving from Colorado to Kansas.
Okay.
And the call came in to my mother because I'd routed all calls to her. And so I get to our new quarters with new furniture. I call my mother and she's screaming like a blithering idiot going, Mom, what's wrong? She goes, your editor. I said, my editor? She said, the editor just called. They want to buy your book.
Wow.
And that was Labor Day weekend.
And when was this approximately?
This was in 1993.
Okay. Wow. So Harlequin, was it a Harlequin Intrigue that you sold, or was it?
Yeah, it was Harlequin Intrigue. It took about 2.5 years to do it because the editors kept leaving. Right. But finally it landed on the senior editor's desk and she immediately bought it. So it was like, yay. And I ended up selling 4 books to them over 4 years.
Wow. Okay.
So I've been in this business from the heavy reader, from the bookstore side, from the author side, and now I'm doing bookseller and actually on a small side, independent publisher, but that's not really, we're not soliciting materials, we're working for other people's. So I see it all. Okay. I speak this language.
Yeah. And no, it's funny. You have to say that because the minute, sometimes, I mean, I've been a writer my entire life. Sometimes you hear publisher and your eyes perk up and you're like, ooh, maybe I can sell them something.
We're not acquiring. We're not that type of publishing company. We're an assisted self-help publishing company. So we help people publish their own books.
And get stuff done. So how did you migrate from writer and then back in, well, I was going to say back into bookselling, but it's not. What you did is you took bookselling to a whole new level with a very author-centric approach. Like, how did that migration happen?
I always wanted to own my own store. And my husband finally said, I'm retiring from the Air Force. And we're in Colorado Springs, Colorado, which I love. I love Colorado. That was our second assignment.
I love Colorado Springs too.
You should come visit more often. I can make it happen. That's another hat I wear. I said, well, I walked in this little bookstore the other day and when Amazon opened up their third-party sales with auctions, I happened to have seen that notice and I happened to have a few extra books around the house. And I said, I can do this. And so I put them up for sale. I sold them all. I took that money. I was living in Great Falls, Montana at that point. I went to a little bookstore. I was shopping what they had. I'm going, oh, I know that book. That's Ann Stewart's very first book, Barrett Hill. I bet that'd bring some money. So I bought it, auctioned it off for $120. Bought it for less than $1. I kept saying, wait, I know from working at the bookstore and from being an author and knowing these people what their old backlist is worth. They're going, yeah, I can't ever find this book. When I see it on eBay, it sells for $15 and that's not fair. And so I said, well, I'll start doing that too. At least they know the money's going to the pocket of someone who appreciates what they do. And I started buying books up because I knew what the market was on them. And taught a friend of mine says, that's a great business. She was in Colorado Springs. I was in Montana. I said, well, here, okay, this is what you do. Taught their entire business. About 3 months after I taught her the business and she was doing quite well, we got an assignment to move to Colorado Springs. And I realized I just taught my competition exactly what I do. So the only other thing we could do was go into business together.
Okay.
And we did. And then I walked in a small bookstore one time when I was scouting around for books. And I'm looking at the owner and she's sitting behind the counter like this. I'm going, what's wrong? She goes, the water heater just broke in the back room and flooded everything. I'm quitting. My grandfather had just died and left me a very small amount of money. I looked at her, I said, how much for everything? And she looked at me. I figured I could at least go through all these books and make money through the auctions and the Z shops. She quoted me a price. I said, okay, I'll buy everything, but I'm going to have help. We've got to put it in storage. And so we boxed up everything in that store, including the register, the counters, the bookshelves, broke down the bookshelves. I reassembled everything in a storage unit and started slowly going through them all and realized that I had enough stock to start a new bookstore. So I coerced my partner into doing it, and we opened up a bookstore in Colorado Springs. Ran for 2.5 years, and we had been operating as Signed Books and More online. And we thought, that's a stupid name because they're not going to mean signed books in our bookstore. And so we were batting around names, and Author was one of the ones we both liked because it was red author, blue author. And we said, okay, we're Author. And it's fewer letters to put on a sign too on the window. In fact, our only sign said books because you have to pay by the letter. And that lasted about 2.5 years until the retail just broke us. We were so much in debt, even though we had a smart bookstore, well organized, well loved, but we didn't have a cash with trade policy, and that killed us because your best customers brought you a bunch of books in, took out a bunch of books, and never spent a penny in the store.
I see. Okay.
So you have to have a cash with trade, or you just can't pay the rent. Can't pay the rent with books, unfortunately.
And this is with a bookstore that deals in used books as well, or used books. Right?
We were strictly used. We did have some new books, and we would order, and that's how we started building up this stuff. Well, we're going to open an Ingram account. We've got to sell X number of books a year to keep the discount up. We can't do that in the store. Let's offer the people that we know, would you like to buy books at a deep discount? And they said, yeah. And so we started doing that, and all of a sudden we could keep our Ingram account alive.
Oh, and because the volume was high enough to justify.
Because we could direct to home ship everything. It didn't have to go through us. All we had to do is order the books to ship directly to them. And if they order 50 books, you got free shipping. You can't beat that. Then one day a Penguin rep showed up on our door. He said, hey, yeah, I heard about you guys. Would you like a Penguin account? We're going, yeah, sure. So we went through Ingram and found all the Penguin authors that we knew and said, hey, we got a Penguin account. You want your books at discount? We can give you a better discount than Ingram does. And it started growing from there. People said, well, can I get my books? I'm with Hachette. Give me a second. Yeah, I just started an account with Hachette. Here's your price for books. And I did that. And at this sitting, I eventually bought out my partner because we were moving. And so I moved everything to Alabama, ran the store there for 10 years, moved everything back. Now I don't carry a lot of stock. Now it's just all ordering for authors, but I have accounts with 18 major and mid-sized publishers and 44 small publishers. Wow. And if you need a book and I don't have an account, by God, I will start an account, and order from them because I prepay all the orders. Wow. So I'm not asking for credit lines, which really
no credit lines with these publishers. Oh, okay.
They love me because the only credit line I have is with Macmillan. Yeah, really, in Ingram.
Okay. Yeah, two small players in the industry. No one's ever
Yeah,
heard of
just
Ingram or
exactly.
Macmillan. So let's explain to authors, because I'm a bookseller myself, so I understand how the
Yeah.
trade business works. But when you say you're going to order books for authors and get them at a discount, I'm going to first explain. I do have traditionally published titles, and Dundurn, Canada,
Uh-huh.
is my biggest publisher that I work with, Canada's largest independent publisher. Now I can get books from Dundurn at a 40% discount, which is typically the discount they give to
Yeah.
bookstores or through the distribution chain. But I don't get royalties, and it doesn't count as a sale if I buy a box of books
Right.
for either marketing or giving away or reselling. But I have brokered deals with some local bookstores where I've said, hey, because I know the discount they get,
Mm-hmm.
I'll order a box, whatever, 48 copies or whatever from you. You put it through your system. All I'm asking for is your staff discount, because I know booksellers get a discount. And that way you're making a tight, small margin,
Mm-hmm.
but you're still making money. And I'm reaping the benefit of the sale. I mean, I'll get the money a year later, but then that way I support a small business, and I also I kind of benefit as an author because
Sure.
it's not a lost cause. Like Dundurn won't count those as sales. So then when they go to consider my next contract, they're like, well, you didn't sell any. Well, that's because I bought them all. You still made the same amount of money.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah,
So,
and
so,
that
so you took advantage of this opportunity to help authors.
right, because there's usually two clauses in your publishing contract. One says that you can't be in competition with the publisher.
Right.
That means you can't buy author copies from them and resell them. Now, some of them have that, some of them don't. All the big ones do have it. And the other one is, like you said, it doesn't generate royalties and doesn't count your sell-through. And of course, the sell-through is the most important thing for your next contract when they look at the percentage of books that you've sold. My advantage is I have a non-returnable account with these publishers, which gives me a better discount. Most bookstores don't have that.
Oh, that's right.
So I'm getting a better discount than your local bookstore, with the exception of Ingram. Ingram doesn't play that game.
Right,
Ingram
right.
has one discount structure, whether it's returnable and non-returnable, and they tell you up front the book
Right.
can't be returned. So I will have these non-returnable accounts with them. And for you, in terms for you to decide whether it's good for you or not, you look at what is your royalty? How much money are you not making when you buy your own books? But when you buy them from me, I probably got a better discount. Now I'm going to cut some of that discount from my own profit. I'm going to work from anywhere from 6 to 9% profit margin because I work on volume.
Yeah, of course, that makes sense.
And
And you can't lose money helping authors, or else you won't be there to help them.
exactly. I've been doing this literally, this portion of the program, doing it by myself, I've been doing since 2007. So
Wow.
I'm in this for the long haul because I don't have high overhead, and I do vacate a lot. And I found out I can take virtually everything with me. I have taken orders while I was in vacation in London because I know I can just wait until 4 o'clock in the afternoon and get Hachette first thing in the morning, and things like
Right.
that. So I can play that game. So I'm literally doing orders, I'd say almost 24/7, but I won't wake up and put an order in for you. I will wait till the next morning when the publishers are open.
Right.
So thanks to volume and non-returnable discount and my low overhead, the bulk of the profit goes into your pocket. Now, let's say the discount you get is 40%. I can sell the books to you at 41%. And you get your royalty. And it goes to your sell-through. Plus, we are a New York Times reporting store.
Oh, that's even better.
Yeah, every Monday morning, I report all the sales. In fact, I'm looking at December 20th bestsellers list they just sent to me right now. So I know who's on the bestsellers list for December 20th on all the lists. I've got the entire thing here. So I get that early too. So I tell friends, you're on the list. I see you on the list.
Wow.
And it's a wonderful business because I'm dealing with authors. We speak the same language. I've published with Harlequin, St. Martin's, Random House, Tyndall, because I actually did some Christian thriller books with them, Cumberland House, Kensington. So I've dealt with a lot of these publishers. I know what's good for the author. And my bottom line is what's good for you. And if you ask me to price out a book for you, and I find out that Amazon could beat my price, I will, with great reluctance and sighing, say, you know what? I can't beat Amazon. You'll do better if you buy it from the damn river.
Right,
And I will tell them that, because the bottom line is what's good for the author. I have an author who just said, I've got an emergency. I need books by December 18th.
Wow.
Well, they're arriving today. She put the order in 2 days ago. I have very good reps with all the publishers, and I won't pull the I need to rush job order card with them unless there is one. And by
Right.
God, they will bend over backwards to get books out. Publishers are great about that.
Oh, yeah, they are.
They're impressively good. I'll say,
Yeah.
well, we'll send it out next day. Oh, thank you. I know how much next day costs shipping across the country.
Right.
You know, client in California wants the books and they're shipping out of New Jersey. That's a big chunk of money, even though they have a UPS account and get big discounts. That's still a lot of money.
That is. So I mean, you're helping authors that get access to their books through a different method that removes some of the pain points. You also have done events as well. I mean, I've been at events where you've had a table, and then prior to the event, you've invited people, authors who have books available through the distribution chain, the ability to either bring in stuff on consignment or stuff that you've ordered through the publishers. How does that work?
We have a standard consignment form. And again, I know how much they're having to pay for their own books, especially if they're working with a small press. They're not getting that self-publishing production cost out of Amazon or Ingram Spark. And so I take a 20% commission fee on what is sold. Everything always belongs to them. At the end of the day, all books unsold go back to them. And I have a contract that they sign. We know exactly what titles came in, what the retail price is, how many units they brought in, and then how many units they bring out, and I pay for the difference. Luckily with writers organizations, we don't have any real loss. People don't walk off with books there because we're all in the same boat together. So it's one of the more honest events you could ever run. I have, so with Superstars, you know, it depends on the organization, whether it's 15 to 20%. And I'll take, you know, up to 5 titles, 5 copies each. And if you sell them out, I'll flag you down and say, bring me more books, and we'll add to your contract. But it gets books on the table. And if you talk about it and someone's interested, there it is for sale. And they're still getting 80% of the retail on it. And they set the retail price. If they want to override the retail price on the book, sticker goes on top of that price and we go from there. I use complete electronic inventory system. So we're able to really keep track of sales really, really well. I've got a Square system that cannot be beat with automatic, touchless even at that. So I love that, man. Yeah, we haven't had any events, of course, canceled due to this COVID fun and games, but I do have a system which would remain mostly touchless, except when people touch your books. I don't know how you do it.
You can't prevent that, but that's what you want. You want them to browse and check it out and get hooked.
I've worked with Friends of Libraries. I've worked with science fiction conventions. In the case of like Dragon Con, I have supplied stock for some Dragon Con vendors because I lived in Birmingham. I would drive to Dragon Con, so I just load up the car full of books and deliver them to the authors. But unfortunately, I live too far for that now, so I'll have to stick with Denver, with Colorado Springs Comic Con and Denver Pop Culture whenever those come back.
Wow. So how, if an author is interested in working with author with your online books, I call it an online bookstore, but it's more than just an online bookstore.
I actually have an online bookstore website with a real powerful back end because I do some special promotions with authors, and I need to have a fully functional online bookstore to handle that. Author-author.net, and no, I couldn't get .com. Some guy's been squatting on it for 20 years.
Yeah.
So it's author-author.net, and on that front page, there's actually a link to Author Purchase Program, which explains everything and gives a list of many of the publishers we work directly with, all the main publishers. I work one-on-one with all my clients. There's nobody else here. This is home office. It's me and 2 dogs and a husband who doesn't walk into the office. So when you call the phone and I have a dedicated office line, you get me. You get the same person who answered your email. So we don't have to re-explain anything. You go, hey, it's Mark. Hey, Mark, yeah, let me pull up your quote. This is what I can do for you. And I've got some clients I've never spoken to on the phone. We're strictly email online.
Right.
They pay by PayPal, or they go through our website and purchase a deposit. So that gives me their credit card information in a secure server. I have a drawer here with about 1,000 3x5 cards in it, which are people's credit card numbers, because we never, ever, ever keep it in any online spreadsheet.
Right.
So it cannot be hacked through our system at all.
Right.
So you're safe when you're working with us. And that's an important thing to know.
Well, and so here's what I'm curious about, depending on some of the relationships you have with publishers, or obviously Ingram, because they have facilities around the world, is for you're not shipping from Colorado Springs. A lot of times these are being drop shipped from the publisher.
I'd
So
say 98%.
could that mean, sorry?
98% of our orders are drop shipped from the publisher or from Ingram.
So could that mean then, I'm just thinking about an author who's maybe in Australia, but it's set up through Ingram, and they don't want to have to pay shipping from the US to Australia, because I know Ingram does have the facilities with print on demand to print locally.
Mm-hmm.
That's a possibility. Something like that happens, or HarperCollins UK or something like that.
I cannot have accounts with any of the other, like HarperCollins UK. I'm only limited to what I can order through HarperCollins US. But I have several Australian authors who are contracted through the US Arms. And they say, I need to get a case of books to this convention.
Oh, and they're traveling, of course.
And I'll drop ship to the convention. Yeah, sometimes they'll drop ship because I'm visiting. I've got one who lives in Puerto Rico, and she says, I'm visiting my family in Miami. Well, give me the address in Miami. I'll ship the books to Miami, and you can take them, whatever's left, because she was doing some signing events there. The Australian clients often are shipping. They're doing promoting things, and they'll have a virtual assistant who lives in the United States. And I'll ship to the virtual assistant. I work with one virtual assistant who has like 3 or 4 New York Times bestselling authors. And it's like one credit card, one account, boom, 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 ship it to her.
Okay.
And it works really well. So she goes, hey, I need books. I say, how many? Here's the price. Charge my card. And that's the entire, that's our entire communication is, okay, I'm shipping it to you. Okay. Yeah, I got your address. I'll ship it right now.
Wow.
And some of there for a while, the publishing companies were really having to drag their feet through COVID. Simon & Schuster still does not have their in-person phone crew in place.
Right.
Macmillan, luckily I have a rep at Macmillan that I can literally get on Facebook going, hey, I just sent you an order. Delightful, wonderful person who has become a friend, because I won't ask her to do anything, outrageous unless the situation warrants it. And maybe I've done that twice over the course of 3 or 4 years. So you're always got to be pleasant to your reps, because they're the ones who make or break your company. If you're nasty to one of those because you're having a bad day, you're not going to get great service. I don't blame them for not wanting to bend over backwards for you. So
wow.
When you talk to Laura at author, you're going to walk away with a smile, because I'm going to shoot some sort of fun breeze with you, not keep you in line too long. So you're not screwing up your statistics on how fast you take an order, but you're going to be happy when you get through, because I'm telling you how wonderful you are. You're solving my problem. I can't yell at you. You're fixing my problems. You're good.
So I have to ask, because you're running this business that is helping authors, lots of authors, with something that they could just not navigate on their own. They don't have the ability, because you have all of the background, the knowledge, the skill, the accounts. What has happened with you as a writer? Have you been able to maintain that?
I've gotten better. There for a while, I had about a 4 to 5 year dry spell.
Okay.
It also kind of happened because I was working with Technobooks in Green Bay, Wisconsin, the great late Martin Greenberg.
Yeah.
And when he passed, that was a revenue stream for me that I lost. And that was very sad, because I had done so much work with them as a ghostwriter.
Right.
Accredited ghostwriter. Short stories. They would say, hey, we've got, I guess I can talk about this now. Donny Osmond wants to do a mystery series. Write us something up. If he likes it, they'll fly you to Vegas to meet him during one of his shows, but that never came to fruition. A couple of the celebrity stuff I did come to fruition. I never met these people, but I wrote as them with them.
And the cool thing about ghostwriting is you usually get no credit for it, but the money's way better.
Money is way better. And I did get cover credit on both of them.
Oh, did you really?
They had the really big Susan Ford and the really little with Laura Hayden.
Okay, I did. Okay, so that's awesome. That's rare.
Yeah, but I went into the contract knowing that I might not get credit.
Right.
But this was after the Lawrence Sanders, Archie McNally series blew up when his bio said that Lawrence Sanders lives in Florida, and Lawrence Sanders had been dead for 4 years. And someone sued the publisher saying, "You lied to me. You said this was written by Lawrence Sanders and it was written by someone else."
Right.
And they won the lawsuit because it was bait and switch. This was not story ideas or anything that came out of the Lawrence Sanders. He didn't have a box under the bed with all these story ideas in it. They just turned it over to somebody else. And at that point, they started getting scared. So all of a sudden, ghostwriters started getting credit. So I got credit on one series and one that should have been a series, but just failed miserably. So not my fault.
So you actually have been able to maintain some of the writing.
Some writing. Like I said, when you move a lot, that kind of takes the wind out of your sails because you don't have this consistent group around you. I've been with my critique group since 1992. Okay. And it's a lot easier this last time when I wasn't living in state because we had email and we had Dropbox and we had all these wonderful ways and cell phones that you could call and not pay long distance charges, but so much different than it was in the early 90s where I was an early email adopter. I had a steady email account in 92, 93, but not everyone did. Not everyone got on their phone and looked at their email every 15 minutes, kind of like I do. So I didn't have this steady connection with them for many years. It was, "Oh, I'm at the conference with you. Let's all room together." But I didn't critique with them because we weren't able to. And I'm here now in the city with my critique group, and that's made me be better. I've been here 2 years, and I am about third way through with a middle grade that I'm working on. I published a middle grade this summer that I wrote with a friend. We sat on it for about 3 years. My fault. I just wasn't ready to release it. It didn't seem right, but we released it in April, I believe it was. And so, yeah.
And you guys, is it under both your names or is it under a pseudonym?
Actually, we used a pseudonym of Ella Vaughn, L for me, and Vaughn is actually, her first name is Vaughn Jocks. We decided, she's always used Evelyn Vaughn, Yvonne, because Vaughn is her real first name. So we kind of mushed that together and came out with Ella Vaughn. It's called Darkwood Crossing, Bailey the Critter Sitter. Really neat story. It's a wonderful world. Oh, I love the world we built. And we know we need to write a second book in the series. She's a teacher. She's a professor in the Texas area. So she's got her hands full surviving. And I got a lot on my plate here. And the author is by far work, but lots of fun.
Wow.
One of the nice things is that I have new authors who'll call me and say, I heard from a loop, I should get my book from you. I'm going, God bless you, loops, because if it's a Sisters in Crime or mystery writers or romance writers in America, any of those groups, or even critique groups, they're very good about saying, "Oh, you need books? You got to talk to Laura. Here's her phone number. Just call her."
Right.
And I talk to people who know nothing about the business. They've written their first book and they've sold it, God bless them, to a major publisher. The editor and their agents have not told them what to expect. I end up talking to them for about an hour on the phone. Explain, okay, this is what you need to do next. And now here's your next step. And this is where you should do this and do that. And it's like, these are babes in the woods. And I'm so glad at least I got a hold of them, because I'm not fattening my wallet by telling them what they need to do in their career. And it's based on 30 years almost in the business, 25 years in the business. And I'm going, okay, now go to your critique group, go to your loop and ask them about this particular thing and see what they say, But don't take it just on me, but let me tell you some key topics you should be concerned about. These are the people to talk to about it.
Wow. Oh, wow. You're going to send me links to some of your books that are available so people can check them out, and I'll post that at starkreflections.ca. We were having a conversation last week, I think, when I was working with you as an author.
Mhm.
And you shared some information that I hope it's okay I ask about here to share with authors, because authors don't understand when they set up a book on Ingram Spark, for example, and they say, okay, I'm going to give it a full 55% discount. The reality, because you're a bookstore, the reality is the bookstore doesn't get a 55% discount. So the money's not all going to the bookstore.
Yeah.
What's actually happening? What are, like, if I set up a 55% discount, what is the bookstore actually seeing that the author isn't aware of?
Luckily, as a small publisher on the side, I have an Ingram Spark account, so I get to see it from that side too.
Oh, you get to see both of them.
Yes. That's why I've made going, I can tell people no, go back into Spark and change it to this, because this is what you need. If you give a 55% discount in Spark, the bookstore is going to get what they call a regular discount. It actually shows up as REG regular. That means depending on the number of books that you buy, how many books were in the total order, basically it'll be anywhere from a 40 to a 43% discount to us. So Ingram's going to pocket usually 15% of that.
Okay.
So if you go down to a 50%, it's going to show up as 36% for me. And it'll go all the way down to 25%. I actually have seen 20%, 10%. And the thing that chills every bookstore's soul is when we see a book listed with net, which means not only do
no
we pay
discount,
we have to pay shipping for it. If we don't order more than 15 books in one particular order.
Yeah, and you're paying shipping.
Yeah. And even if I get free shipping with 15 books, which I do from 2 of their warehouses, I still have to pay a fuel tax. So I'm still paying $2.25 per 15 book order.
Wow.
And so I'm going to make any profit, I have to go above the retail price. So a bookstore is not even going to order it for that customer who comes in going, I really need this book. I'm going, I'm sorry, I can't get it. Or I have to charge you a $5 fee for me to get it. And that makes you look bad as a bookstore. You'd rather say, no, I can't get it. Than
it's
say,
easier. It's easier.
It's
easier to point them to Amazon.
Yeah, exactly. Go to Amazon, because I don't know how they get to have it for that price, but they do.
So speaking of Amazon, and this I'm just trying to help inform authors. So when an author sets up Kindle Direct Publishing print, that automatically, there's no 55% discount. There's some sort of short discount. What does that end up looking like? That's not a net. Is it just
no? It's not net. It's 25% on our side. Okay. So when you set up your KDP and you select expanded distribution, that will throw it into Ingram. Often Ingram does their own printing on it, which is kind of nice. Ingram and Amazon have some sort of printing agreement, because sometimes you'll get a book, you go, that was printed through Ingram and I ordered it through Amazon. So I think whoever's espresso machine is not busy, they'll stick it on that and ship from there.
Well, I imagine Amazon's probably a large account for them.
I just think so. But it's a 25% discount on our side, non-returnable, period. There's no way to make Ingram KDP book returnable on Ingram. What a lot of people have done is you can use the same ISBN. You have to coordinate with straight off on KDP and then go to Ingram, I believe is the order. And then tell Ingram that you're reusing a KDP, but it has to be the exact same trim size, exact same content, exact same cover. If it is completely identical, so any description of the book of 280 pages, 5.5 by 8.5, the same cover art, you can use the same ISBN, because they don't care who the printer is. Right. You're the publisher on record. And you do want to use a publisher name when you're with Amazon, because otherwise it comes up as independently published on Ingram, and you're lumped in with everybody else. Right. With Ingram, you can actually go in and select a publisher and look at all the titles they have. So if I'm running my books under, Laura Hayden Press, which I don't, and I'm in Ingram, you can click on Laura Hayden Press and look at all Laura Hayden Press books.
Don't you mean Hayden House Publishing?
Yeah, wouldn't that be nice? Hayden Books, the big tech company. Yeah, I haven't used those just for that very reason. But I can actually see everything published by that company. I can do that with any of the big presses.
Right.
And one of the services I provide kind of on the side, often mostly on Facebook and some of the groups I'm in, they'll say, oh, what about this publisher? Are they good? And I've never heard of them. I'll go to Ingram and I'll pull up all of their books. And I'll see they haven't listed a book on Ingram in 3 years. So no, I don't think they are very good if they're offering you print distribution. Or they'll say, or I'll see that the discount is 10% or net. I'm going, no, don't sell to them. You do better selling yourself. They're not going to offer you anything that you can't do yourself.
Wow.
And I like small presses. Some small presses are just fantastic. But I'll steer them away from someone who's just taking their money to put it on vellum and slap a $5 cover on it. You know, it's like, no,
Right.
that's not what you should be paying your big bucks to.
Yeah. I mean, I've always said the reason you may want to go with the traditional publisher, apart from the fact they have in-house editorial and design usually, is they actually have real distribution, not the distribution I can get by using a print-on-demand service, right? That's the main reason you would do it. Yeah, the margin you end up with at the end of the day is relatively the same. It's about 8%. I mean, once you factor in the cost of printing, the cost of distribution, right? It's not all that different. Maybe I make a tiny bit more, but it's not, I don't think it's for that. It's for, oh no, I want my books to be in bookstores. Well, that publisher, you're probably able to go, that publisher isn't going to get your book in bookstores.
No, it's going to be in Ingram, and that doesn't mean it's going to be in the bookstore. I get the Ingram catalog every month also, and I will see some of the small presses who actually do an advertisement here, and I'm so surprised. You know, here's a 2-page HarperCollins, and then there'll be a half-page small press. I'm going, oh, interesting. They actually put some money into promotion by going into the catalog.
Yeah, because that is an option. Even through Ingram Spark, you have an option of making it available in the advanced catalog with an ad.
But all you get with that, and see, it's another case of seeing it. It's something like this. All you get is a listing like that.
Right. Is that the generic listing? That's not the paid listing.
No, everything's paid. You don't get a generic listing in here unless you pay for it.
It's just if you've paid the $80 or whatever.
$80, this is what you get.
Okay.
And I have pages and pages and pages of those, you know. So am I going to go through every one of them?
So what is this, 100-page quarterly?
Let's see, it's a monthly, and it is 170 pages.
All right, so it's not like there's 20 titles. There's going to be thousands. Okay.
But there's the first half of it is all color print ads from the big publishers.
Right. Okay.
And of course, those are the ones that catch your eye. And there'll be 1 or 2 articles in there, decent about the business or an author.
Right.
But it's a lot of money. But it's distribution. I mean, Ingram is solid when it comes to distribution. Everybody can get an Ingram account.
Yeah.
In a bookstore. I think the minimum you can get is like a $3,000 per year account, but then your discounts are very low.
Right. Yeah. Well, I really appreciate you sharing these insights. I think they're really valuable for authors to understand. What's one thing that you wish authors coming into the business that you wish that they would understand about bookstores or understand about the supply chain in general, since you get to see it from all the angles?
Yeah. If you have a book that's non-returnable, you're asking me to invest non-recoverable capital into a career. I don't know you. I don't know how good your books are. I'm not really, when I had a bricks and mortar store, I wasn't really anxious to buy a bunch of non-returnable books. I kept some of those returnable books for 10 years because I couldn't give them away. I literally would donate them and take some money off my taxes because that was all the worth they had to me. Right. And they weren't worth the cover price. So I hate to tell some authors is that urging your local bookstore to carry your book has a lot of problems in it if it's only available non-returnable. Some bookstores, and that would be some of your smaller ones, might take books on consignment.
Right.
If they do, you need to present them. If they don't already have a consignment contract, you need to have one that says, I'm bringing in X number of books on this date. the cover price is this amount. For books that you sell, you may keep this percentage of the cover. I will be back or contact you on this date to arrange to pick up any remaining copies, or you can call me at this number if you need more copies. Some of them will let you do that. It takes a smaller store, but I have an acquaintance who lives in Denver and was able to make a consignment deal with a tattered cover. That's a major thing.
Yeah.
And they took a big chunk because they're tattered cover. They're used to Stonewall 40%, but he gave it to them. And it was very special for a tattered cover to take that. But he came there, did book signings, would come and sign stock, whatever they wanted, congenial, how you doing? He kept the transactions low key, but positive, and was a very pleasant person to be around. He sold a good number of books that way.
Wow.
I don't know that tattered cover is open to a lot of people doing that. I think he was a steady customer and they knew his face from that. So,
well, yeah, he was part of the community. He was engaged with them. It wasn't just a random drive-by.
Exactly. And the only way a random drive-by works really well is if you're traditionally published and they already have your stock.
Yeah. And you're a recognized name that's probably always on the New York Times bestseller list. That
helps too. In this case, that wasn't his situation. He is not a well-known author, but he's a personable young man who just has a really good way about him. And I think that went far with dealing with tattered cover.
Awesome. Wow. Well, Laura, thank you so much for sharing so many insights, so much expertise with me today.
You can say I'm not afraid of talking.
And where, just remind people where they can find out more about author or yourself as an author.
Author-author.net online, and you can find out about any of our specials, any of our author purchase program, and please email me at author@prodigy.net. Yes, I still have a Prodigy account since 1992.
Ooh, classic.
It's PRODIGY, Prodigy. Email me and I answer everything myself. I do have a canned email I will send, but in the middle of it, we stop the can and then I start talking about your exact situation. So it gets through, it allows me to give you everything you need to know in a bulleted format, but then we break through and have the personal connection. My telephone number is 205-582-2750 or 888-877-READ, 872-7323. I can't remember what those numbers are.
That's beautiful. Yeah, because you just need to know read.
Read. Just, we can do that, As an author, my woefully neglected website is suspense.net. I got that one early on in the career. Too. Yeah, really. You can get me at suspense@suspense.net or Laura@suspense.net. So that's my life.
Awesome. Laura, thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome, Mark. And thank you so much for this opportunity. And come on, let's sell some books.
Yes.
Because as my motto is, authors should never pay retail for their own book. And I'm here to make sure you don't.
Where do I start with the value and the information that Laura shared? We were talking a couple weeks ago when I was releasing the book Rude Awakenings from Sleeping Rough that I published under my Stark Publishing imprint through Ingram Spark as well as through Draft to Digital Print. I did the hardcover through Spark and the paperback through Draft to Digital Print. And Laura had set up, she offered to make it available for 10% off on Author, which is fantastic because she's ordering them basically through Ingram. And that's a great opportunity. So people can order it through any online bookstore. They can order through their local bookstore. They can order from Author and get 10% off. And Peter still gets the same amount of money, so you can support her business as well as that book. But when we were talking about that, I'd started to talk to her about some of the discounts because, I know the discount I set up. Well, I know it's a standard when you go through Draft to Digital Print. You don't have control over what the the discount is, but with Ingram Spark, you can control the discount 55% or as low as you want to go. And I was just asking her, what does it look like on your end as a bookseller? And she shared some of that info, and I was like, wow, this is something we really need to make sure authors are completely aware of, because bookstores are not getting 55%. So that was an insightful thing that I just wanted to remind authors about, is that just because it looks like something on your end doesn't necessarily mean that's the way it looks on the other end, on the receiving end, especially when there's so many different parties involved in the supply chain, which is a complete and dramatic difference between print publishing and ebook publishing. And I think it's critical for indie authors to understand that there is a significant 100 years long business there that still operates and still makes billions of dollars. It's not chump change. It's not small. It's just not a market that indie authors are really a part of. It's a market that traditional publishers are part of, which is why traditional publishers and indie authors don't see eye to eye, because they're looking at two different things. That was one of the things I wanted to reflect on. I also wanted to reflect on something that sort of happened to Laura as she was creating this author-centric business and successfully running this author-centric business, as her own writing took a back seat. And I can completely empathize with that, because I've loved the roles that I've had almost since I started bookselling in 1992. And I only got into bookselling because of my passion for writing. 92 was the very first year I sold my very first short story. And I'm probably, it's funny, in some ways I've gotten ahead in my bookselling career because of the things that I do in terms of being an industry representative. But in many ways, I have not invested the time that I should have in my writing career. Writing was always put off to the side. Writing was always back burner stuff. Writing was always stuff to do in my spare time, in the evenings and weekends, etc. And when I left my corporate role at Kobo at the end of 2017, I actually thought I would have more time for writing, but I realized something really important. I'm very passionate about, and I love what I do helping authors, just like Laura does. And even though I know I could probably be doing better, I'm not sure how much better if I was focusing only on my writing, but I would obviously have a lot more content out there. And typically with a lot more content, a lot more focus, it's usually do more successful. But I'm happy with what I'm doing. I am happy. I am ecstatic. I'm delighted that I get to help writers. Just the looks on the faces of the folks I mentioned prior to this interview when I was talking in my personal update about doing those library talks and helping writers understand the possibility of what exists, as well as some of the pitfalls that lie waiting for them. I am privileged and honored that I get to do that. So I don't know if I could ever say goodbye to it. I mean, obviously I left the corporate world and immediately wanted to start this podcast because I wanted to keep learning, obviously, and I wanted to continue to help other writers. And it wasn't even a full year before I ended up joining Drafted Digital as a part-time employee, because I loved what Drafted Digital was doing with authors, and I wanted to be a part of what they were doing to help authors by creating amazing tools for them. So it's kind of interesting when you look at the two sides of the coin, and I don't think I would have it any other way, because my writing does satisfy and fulfill me, but working with writers and working with authors and helping share information fulfills me as well. The two sides of the Mark Leslie Lefebvre coin. I suppose the one side of the coin might be the Mark Leslie, and the other side would be the Mark Leslie Lefebvre or the Mark Lefebvre. Anyways, that is it for my reflection at the end of this episode. That is it for this episode. Thank you so much for listening to the podcast. You can check out the show notes over at starkreflections.ca. So until next week and next episode, this is Mark Leslie Lefebvre with both sides of my coin here, wishing you great writing and good Stark Reflections.
Thank you for listening to the Stark Reflections podcast. You can find show notes for each episode at starkreflections.ca.
The music for this podcast, Laser Groove, was composed and produced by Kevin MacLeod. Check out more of Kevin's great music at incomptech.com.